My name is John Atkinson, and I lead the sales transformation practice for Fahrenheit Advisors. And I'm very excited today. With me is Gary Thompson. He's the founder of Thompson Consulting, and a sought after consultant to CPA and professional services firms around the country. Many years ago, he took a chance and hired me, so I'm grateful for that. And I hope that he thinks that worked out. I consider him a mentor in a lot of ways, and really benefited from his friendship and from working with him and his wisdom. He brings a wealth of experience from his days at the Big Eight to starting his own CPA firm, and then to helping a regional firm to grow into a top 20 firm. Also has served as a chair of the VSCPA and other accounting organizations. So Gary, welcome.
John, thanks so much. It's great to be with you. Obviously, I have a great amount of admiration for the time we were able to spend together, and you personally, congratulations to you on your new role at Fahrenheit, a great company, and the sales transformation process. I really look forward to our conversation today.
Great. Well, I caught up recently and discussed our work with respective CPA firms and just the trends that are out there, the challenges that these firms are having. And certainly, there's no doubt there's a staff shortage and some challenges right around capacity.
Yep.
And with that, it seems to be a sense that firms are not prioritizing growth this year, that it's not as important as before. So what would you say to those firms about the importance of growth, even with these challenges?
So I'll answer your question, then dive into a little bit. I would say growth is an imperative for firms. If you look at what an imperative means, it's absolutely necessary. So yes, you are correct, John. You and I both in working with firms, particularly as I've had the opportunity to talk to managing partners, there is this knowledge that we need to grow. And then there's this fear that if we talk about growth with our partners and staff who are already feeling pressured and stressed out because of the never-ending busy season, because of the uncertainties that have been driven, that if we have those conversations and set targets around growth, that's going to be a tipping point. And so everyone's trying to find the right balance. Again, knowledge, we must grow. Realities, how do we address growth at a time that we're all feeling very stressed? So it's a topic. People articulate it differently is a good way of saying it, John. And so one managing partner or one partner at a firm or staff may say it one way or the other, but the bottom line is everyone's concerned about how do we talk about growth when we seem to have a hard time getting all the people we need just to get the work done.
Sure. Now, are you seeing a difference in that sentiment of not quite a focus on growth as much this year across practice areas or service lines, industry practices?
Yeah, so John, you and I know from our experiences in our public accounting days as well as our days as consultant that there's a big move and trend toward advisory, and everyone wants and needs to build advisory. They believe that's the wave of the future. Even in the last 2 years, as we have at CPA firms seen things like the PPP program and ERC and all these programs, we as CPAs recognize the opportunity that we have to be advisors, not just to do a tax return or do an audit, but to be advisors. So many firms are wanting to capitalize on this concept of growing advisory. At the same time, again, worried about how do you do that in the context of not burning your people out, anymore. And so I kind of throw this back to you a little bit, John. When you think about the need for growth, what are some of the positive things that you see and experience when you're with firms that are growing? I mean, kind of what's the vibe around a firm that's growing?
Certainly, you're right on point about advisory growing. There's just a lot of upside there. A lot of clients need help out there. An interesting thing happened also in this COVID-related challenge is that it's opened the world up where clients expect that we'll be on a Teams call and we don't have to fly to the West Coast from the East Coast to start a relationship. So it actually has opened up the world in a lot of ways, and that affects a lot of different practice areas. Gone are the days where your tax advisor has to be right next door. So that's an opportunity for all firms, I see.
Yeah, and advising is more than just being able to do something for someone. Oftentimes, advising is you're playing quarterback for a client situation. If we think back to a year and a half ago when firms or organizations were worried about making payroll and who to keep and not keep, being that person as a CPA who could sit down with a client virtually, to your point, and to think about what are all the resources that we can bring, what are the bankers that we can bring in, attorneys that we can bring in, whatever the situation is, HR professionals, and think through these things. And so our advising was much more than just technical. Advising was, we're the quarterback, we're the point person, we became the people that they relied on. So you and I can think fancily about the term advisory, or we can say advisory is just as the word indicates. We're advising and playing that critical role, even when we may not be the one signing a piece of paper or closing a deal or helping them find an attorney. It's really about moving things along.
Yeah, great points, Gary. I see this opportunity that was really triggered by COVID to help younger folks in the firm to find career paths, valuable career paths, and to find specialties beyond audit and tax if they're interested, and finding ways to get more involved in the growth process earlier so that they don't wait until they're become partners to do that. And that's opened up the world to them. And it's also a retention tool to keep all team members engaged and helping to find more advisory clients, which, like you said, is nothing more than helping a company to either solve a challenge or take advantage of an opportunity.
Yeah, and I think part of that point, John, is as you and I worked together for years, oftentimes when you go out and build new service lines and you articulate something that goes like this, the compliance areas of our practice are really being challenged. As an industry, we're seeing fewer and fewer people wanting that. Well, when we go out and build advisory practices, we often make our core services, our compliance people, nervous. What does that mean about me and my future? What you've just articulated and what firms are seeing is that we can take people who are in those compliance roles and help them pivot to become more advisory. Yes, do we want to build the type of advisory that may require us to bring out outside resources or new people? Of course we do. But we're also talking about the ability to take some of our people who are compliance oriented and just convert them to being more advisory oriented and making that to be a way of thinking. So earlier when I was talking about a vibe, there's a vibe at a firm that just makes you feel good about growing, that makes even people who are in challenged areas feel good about the fact that the firm is expanding its services, is looking for new ways to engage its people, that says, this is a firm that's invested in me. So I think there's a couple of opportunities to send the right message, even to folks where industries or service lines are challenged, but then also say, hey, we're a firm with a little bit of, you and I would know this term from one of our former colleagues, we have a little bit of swagger about us because we're growing when others aren't.
Yeah, I love both those words, swagger. We know who that came from, and vibe. And yeah, the firms that I enjoy working with are the ones that have the vibe or want to have that vibe. And those are the kinds of firms that people want to work for, because they're moving onward and upward, and that's where the opportunities are. And that's what people want.
I've been at a number of partner retreats and then some staff meetings with manager, senior manager level people. And I'll ask two questions. The first one is, how many of you want to focus on growth given how busy you are? And they all kind of hold their hands down. There'll be the few in the back of the room, your type and my type that know that. But then you ask the next question, how many of you want to be part of a firm that's growing? Almost everyone raises their hand. So it is, what you're doing, John, and the consulting that you're going to be doing. It's trying to give this awareness of this balance to, we want to grow. Here's how it complements where you want to go career-wise. We want to grow because it's a vibrancy of our firm. We want to grow because it gives opportunity for our people in the future. We want to grow because it stabilizes market position, and I can go on and on and on. And what you and the folks at Fahrenheit are trying to do through your sales transformation process is do just that, right? To recognize that we all sell differently, we all grow differently, but there's a way for each of us to be involved.
Yeah, I agree, Gary. I think of two things based on what you just said. First, to demystify growth. It's not scary. It is a conversation that turns into a relationship. that tends into helping to solve a need. And companies all have them. And the second thing is every firm is different. So what we've been doing, what I've really enjoyed doing, is first learning more about the firm and where their opportunities are, and then building a simple, repeatable structure to help them grow firm-wide, by service line, by industry, practice area, and not just the senior partners, but getting everyone involved. After a few wins, they really get excited and have more of that vibe that you're talking about.
John, one of the things that you and I've talked about, and I'd like for you just to explore for a moment with folks listening to this, is there's basically 4 or 5 types of CPAs in the world, and they just change names by firm. And we all know the type. There's the highly technical one, there's the business development oriented, there's the client service ones, those are the ones that want to do leadership and things of that nature. And each of those goes about growth a different way. So you have dealt with all of those type of personalities and people. Why don't you maybe just flesh out a little bit on how, it's not just one process, right? It is taking the different personalities that basically are embedded in CPA firms and helping them grow in their unique way.
That's right. Yeah. If you've worked with CPA firms long enough, you know their personas. Like you said, it used to be the grinder, the finder, and the minder. It's expanded beyond that, and you're right. It's not one size fits all. As an example, in our work, we work with managing partners, but also practice area leaders, and that practice area leader, he or she may have all 3 of those personas in their practice area. So some of it is building a repeatable process and a plan for that practice area, but also some one-on-one coaching with the minder and the grinder and the finder, to build something where they're comfortable and they're effective and they're repeatable in how they go to market.
Yeah. And those serve as models to our young folks who are following us in practice, and they see that you can be an excellent salesperson by really developing the client relationships that you already have and do well. And then there's some of us that want to be out at every rubber chicken dinner, whether it's Kiwanis or Rotary, even those have changed during COVID, that there's a way for us to think growth within our basic personality. Now, your job is to push people to do better even within their own personality. But the point that I hear from you often and know from experience, that you will take where a person is inherently, push to make them better, and push to define processes that benefit them in terms of growth, success, not wanting Jane to have to look like Joe or Joe to look like Jane, but to make them the best of what they can be within the context of their firm.
You nailed it. That's it. Working, using their own personality and their skills, and there's just as much upside and opportunity in growing current relationships. And I'm also guilty of this, of not always spending enough time on that and nurturing those relationships. That's a big opportunity right now to cross-sell and to expand on the relationship. And you mentioned the advisory piece, bringing more of the advisory into the compliance relationships that we have, with just a couple of key questions and a couple of introductions, and doing that with some regular cadence can make all the difference.
Yeah. Well, John, there's just no neutral in business, right? We're either going forward or we're going backwards. We don't all have to have massive growth goals that may not fit our culture. But the reality is that we live in an era where M&A deals are taking clients away right and left, not because of poor service, but because it's M&A. They get acquired and they're no longer our client. Mergers, acquisitions, combination of companies really require that we be engaged around growth, sometimes just to keep up with those transitions, other times because we're trying to add market share. So I just encourage firms, and I know you do the same, that while we're pressured right now in a unique way, maybe so much more than I ever have seen in my 37 years in the profession, but when we say we're going to shut growth down, it's a really dangerous decision. So to keep focused on growth and to keep focused on the right type of growth is really important for firms. And I know that you preach the similar type message when you're out with firms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's well said, Gary. It's important that it's top of mind even in these challenging times. And I really hope that the firms out there that listen to this can benefit from this reminder and some some of the nuances around it. So Gary, thank you for spending time with me. So I always enjoy talking to you, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Same here, John. Thanks so much for inviting me to join you today, and keep up the great work at Fahrenheit.
Thanks, Gary. Take care.